Welcome to the Intentional Encourager podcast, where each episode brings you compelling conversations and stories designed to entertain, enlighten, and encourage. And now here's your host, Brian Sexton.
Hey everybody, Brian Sexton. I am intentionally encouraged when I see people doing business the right way. And for the last 15 years, Damon Burton and his team at SEO National have done just that. Now you might say, Brian, what can they do for me in my business? I'm going to tell you what they can do for you. They can help you understand search engine optimization. There are a lot of players out there in the marketplace, but you want a team of people that are going to be dedicated to working with you and helping you to understand search engine optimization and how you can show up higher on search engines so that you can bring more revenue into your business. Damon and his team are full of integrity, honesty, decency, and trust. And if that's important to you and that encourages you, I would encourage you to give them a call today at 855-736-6285 or go to SEOnational.com and get a free quote and tell them you heard about it on the Intentional Encourager podcast. Get ready for a dynamite conversation coming up right now on the Intentional Encourager podcast.
And welcome into the Intentional Encourager podcast. I'm your host, Brian Sexton. Thank you for joining us again today. Got a different podcast for you, but I've got a story that I believe you're going to want to stick around and hear. And this is with my friend, Michael Merkel, who has joined us today. Now, Michael, I'm going to say this up front. Michael's not an author. He's not he doesn't have a lot of big fancy titles around his name. There's some people who got a lot of titles around their name. But what Michael has is he has an incredible story. And Michael ministers in his home church in Kennedyville, Maryland. And so, again, you can find him on Twitter. He'll tell you how to do that, connect with him there. But you can see him and hear him right here, right now on the Intentional Encourager podcast. Michael Merkel. Michael, how you doing tonight?
Oh, I'm doing good. I'm walking on sunshine, brother.
There you go. And I say tonight, for those of you that will hear this recording, we release recordings in the mornings, but we record them at night. So it's a little bit different setup. But again, I so appreciate you joining me. Hey, Michael, I want you to take me through, and I ask this as you know, of just about every guest that I have on the podcast. I want to know what the last couple of years have been like as we have kind of navigated and walked through the coronavirus, and we are, thank the Lord, we are on the other side of it. And so I'm very grateful for that, and I know you are as well. Walk me through the last couple of years. What lessons have you learned from what we've gone through the last couple of years?
Oh, wow, that's a big one. Last couple of years, for me personally, well, there's been a lot that has went on. God has really had me in a waiting room for some time. I desire with all that I am to minister, to share Christ with anyone. And when things got comfortable, and then the pandemic hit, I think it put a lot of, I think one of the things the pandemic did for, as a whole, is I think it created a fear, as we were starting to be able to integrate back one with another and worship. Everybody, there was a lot of standoffish stuff. How do I put it? Laying hands on people was questionable. And I don't think just in our area, I think it was all the way around. But coming out of it, I think I look at it now and I see where, I look at it now where I see people coming out of it, as far as, looking at this sickness and knowing that it's still a real thing. I know the pandemic and COVID and all that went on was a real thing.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think that I think I think we're getting to a point where we're saying, okay, it's not leaving. As much as the government or whoever wants to try to remove it from society, I think we're starting to integrate it into our society. Say it's here, it's not going nowhere, and we're just going to have to live through it and get through it, just like any other sickness.
Sure,
Um,
sure.
but I know that God is able.
Yeah.
I myself have had COVID 3 times.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah.
So have you learned, so has every time that you've had it, and I have a dear friend of mine that's a dear brother in the Lord to me, he's had it twice. Have you learned something different through each time? Because, Michael, you're 100% correct. There were people, and I am not saying this to dismiss anyone's experience around it. Some people, and my family, we had a dear friend of ours that passed from it. And again, his son is a pastor in the Huntington, West Virginia area. I don't want to diminish that one bit, but we have also had people that have come through like yourself, having it multiple times and coming out each time just fine with it. Each time that COVID visited you, do you feel like you learned something from it, or was after the first time and you got through it, when it came a second time? Because a lot of people would say, oh no, man, I got it again. There might be fear or disgust or things like that. What went through your mind as it came a second and a third time to you?
Well, brother, I'll tell you, the third time, I don't even remember it because I had it while I was in shock trauma, sedated for a month. But the very first time that I got it, Maryland didn't even have test results. I had went to a hospital 3 times, 2 different hospitals. And on the very last one, they told me not to come back, that they couldn't help me. They had tested me for every flu, every virus known. But when it came for the COVID, there was Maryland didn't have any tests at that time. So I went home. I was out of work for a month. I was in my house for a month. I didn't sleep. I did not sleep. Any sleeping I did was like catnapping during the day. When I was, my wife wound up having to put a trash bucket by me, because I would go on these 8, and I'm not kidding. I'm not exaggerating this by any means when I say this, but I would go on 8-10 hour coughs. These coughs that just would not stop. And normally when you get the flu and you cough, you have a little phlegm. But this was like some kind of thick glue that was coming out.
Mm-hmm.
It was bad. There was many a nights, my wife, she would just sit upstairs, and she told me she would just cry and pray that God would keep me. There was sometimes that the coughing spells were so bad that it got to a point that my stomach muscles and my chest muscles were so weakened from it that I didn't even have the strength to cough when I had to cough. And there was times that I would just literally choke on the phlegm that was in the back of my throat. I truly, my late pastor brother, Carl Harden, the one day he was on the phone with me during the day when I went on one of these cough spells. He had to hang up, but he thought I needed to go to the hospital then. I had even when I went to the hospital, the second hospital and the third time, or from the first time getting COVID, my lungs were in so much distress. Breathing treatments were only helping for a couple seconds. I am asthmatic, but it was like nothing was helping. So from the very first time, I truly, truly had to lean on the grace of God. I would sit there and I would just have to pray and say, God, we got to get through one more night. And as it progressed, each night I could feel myself getting better, I guess. And I would just have this hope and this faith. God, if you can get me through this night, I know I'll be stronger tomorrow. And so that's kind of what it was like on the first time. The second time, it was a breeze. The second time, I didn't have any symptoms. The second time, in fact, my whole family, even my wife, had it. If anybody I thought was going to go to the hospital on the second time, it was my wife. The third time, I had contracepted that while I was in the hospital from my accident, and which is one of the reasons that they had me on the respirator. But I was sedated through that whole ordeal that we'll eventually get into.
Sure.
So I can't even tell you about the third time.
Hey everybody, Brian Sexton. Prices are going up by the day. We've got to find ways to increase our household revenue. Now, a couple ways you could do that is, one, you could go and ask your boss for a raise. But if that doesn't work, I've got another way for you. It's my friend Joe Hart's program called Products for Profit. Joe's been a guest here on the Intentional Encourager podcast and told his story about how learning retail arbitrage changed his life, and he's been helping thousands of people change theirs. Now, retail arbitrage is simply this. It's taking a product and buying it and then reselling it online for a higher price, and you keep the profits. And guess what? Amazon and Walmart use third-party resellers every day to fulfill their customer orders. I want you to go to productsforprofit.com or productsforprofit.carrd.co. Get connected to Joe's team. Tell him you heard about it on the Intentional Encourager podcast and start making money today with Products for Profit. And now let's get back to more great conversation on the Intentional Encourager podcast.
Well, and you have been through, Michael, the thing that I admire about you is that you have been through a lot of things anyway in your life. You've been through traumas and things like that. You just mentioned an accident. You know, a lot of times, here's what I'll say, is people have not been through the level of things that you've been through. And so this was your immediate reflex response was to pray yourself through it. You know, you ask God, get me through one, let's get through one more night. Knowing that he was able to do that, and he did keep you through that. And I also have to believe that you felt like if it wasn't the Lord's will to get you through that was okay too. You were ready to go.
Yeah.
It was like, okay, whatever, Lord, whatever happens, it's going to happen, and you're in control of it, so we're going to do things according to your plan. Let's pivot here, and I think this is a great place to pivot because you alluded to it. I want you to walk me through your story because that's why I reached out and said, hey, I need to have you on to tell. And you mentioned something, I'll mention this to the listeners. You mentioned something back to me, a podcast that we did with my friend Pastor Pascal Kreitz that really spoke to you and helped you. And again, folks, this is what this podcast is about. It's about spreading that intentional encouragement to help you through the stories of other people. So, Michael, I want to give you the floor. And I may jump in with a question or two around that, but I really feel like, and we do this is unusual territory because we don't jump into stories normally this quickly. But take me through your story because you really walked through some things in your life.
Well, Brian, thank you. Pascal Kreitz, he has become a dear friend of mine. I talk to him not on a daily basis, but pretty regular. Um, excuse me if I get a little emotional, because this story, it's still hard to my heart, or soft to my heart. Um, a lot took place at this. So I'll walk you through it, and we'll see where the Lord takes me with it. Let me start off with saying, when the accident, when the accident happened, and all of 1 month that I was in shock trauma in Baltimore, Maryland, I don't remember any of it. I
How
was
long
not
ago was
awake.
the accident, Michael? If you don't mind me, just for
The
clarity
accident,
for the audience.
took place September 28th at 7:59 p.m.
So this was this past year in 2021.
Yes, 2021.
Okay.
So all this is pieces that I've had to piece together until I came out of sedation. But I was coming back from my last pizza delivery, and I opened the restaurant 6 days a week. And I usually work till 8 o'clock at night till whenever we close. And my boss had said that after that last, when I was coming back, that I was heading home. So I was making a left turn into the restaurant, and a young lady was texting and driving, playing with the radio, teenage girl, and about 60 miles an hour rammed into the back of me, not even seeing that I was stopped with a turn signal on. When she had hit me so hard that she drove me onto into oncoming traffic, which there was a F-250 that ran into the front of me at 60 miles an hour. He was an off-duty state trooper. I was just in a little old 97 Toyota Corolla. When she hit me from the back.
Yeah, those things aren't designed to take much impact, Michael.
No, they weren't. Economically, they save gas, but they don't save a body.
Well, let me ask you this. So you feel the initial impact from
I don't even remember it.
So yeah, but that's right, because I guess at the moment. So let me step back here, and again, I'm just trying to build some clarity here.
Mm-hmm.
So the moment of impact for you is when everything just shut down, and so now you don't remember anything, but she hits you so hard that from accounts it puts you into oncoming traffic. So you get hit from the back, you get hit from the front. Was there? You don't remember this, but was there? I would assume there was no airbag to protect you in the front.
Was.
So you're taking that trauma from the airbag hitting you full on in the face and chest, which airbags that deploy, especially at that high rate of speed, they come out of there pretty hard.
Yeah.
So take me through what you know happened. And let me stop here just a second. Let me just back up just a second. Is it surreal to you that you're hearing something that happened to you from another perspective rather than your own? Because it's almost like you're hearing the story about what happened to you, like other people are hearing the story of what happened to you. Is it surreal to you that you have to figure out this piece of your life from other people's accounts of it?
Oh yeah. It was hard because you leave your house that day, as everybody does when they go to work, expecting to come home that night. I got to hug and kiss my 3 kids off to work, or off to school, before they left for the bus. I got to hug and kiss my wife before I left for work that morning. And in fact, she went to work with me that day. Or she went to work that morning. I had to drop her off. And when you think about not coming home, I know whatever God allows to happen in our life, He loves us. Whether He decides to keep me here or take me home with Him, He loves me.
Mm-hmm.
And He will always know what's best for me, even when I don't know what's best for me.
Right. 100%.
So it is surreal. It's my wife could have been in that accident that morning, because she went to work like I said, she went to work with me that day, and she didn't even. She called me about 12 o'clock, and we were in our lunch rush, and she says, "Honey," she says, "I thought I had to work today, but I didn't." She said, "Is there any way you could come pick me up?" And I said, and I was on a delivery. I said, "Yeah." I said, "Let me call my boss and let him know what I'm doing." So I called him and I said, "Hey," I said, "my wife is off work." I said, "I'm gonna take these deliveries. If it's all right with you, can I go pick her up?" He said, "Yeah." So I picked her up, and I said to her, I says, "Look," I says, "I don't know when I can get you home." I says, "I may have to you may have to ride with me until I get a delivery towards the house, and then I'll drop you off." And she says, "Well, I can just ride with you all day." And I says, "No." I says, I feel like I need to take you home." So I called my boss and I said, "Hey, is there any orders on the screen that I could just take a quick break and run my wife home, and I'll be right back to work?" And he said, "Yeah, as long as you come back." And I got home, and my wife looked at me and she said, "I really wish you wouldn't go back to work." I said, "Well, quite honest with you, I don't want to go back to work, but I have to." So I went back to work and I dropped her off at the house. And then that evening, like I said, at 7:59, the accident happened. I got When the accident happened, my boss saw it, and he was standing outside waiting for me, actually, because when we make delivery, our phones are hooked to an app that has like this GPS locator, so they can know when a driver's coming in, so they can get orders ready to send them out. And he knew I was coming, so he was in the parking lot and he watched the accident unfold right in front of him. And he ran out to me, and he said when he got out to me, I was already unconscious. And he was screaming my name, "Michael, Michael." And he said after about 10 minutes of that, I finally woke up. And he said that I said, "Mom, my back, my neck, my legs." And he said, "Michael, don't move. Do not move. Help is on the way." Um, the back of the car and the trunk, from when the young lady hit me, pushed the back seat and everything that was on the back seat in the trunk to the front of the car. And when the F-250 hit me head on, everything that was in the front of the car now was pushed to the back, plus stuff was on top of me. If my driver's seat did not break and lay back flat, the windshield was coming in, and they said that it would have decapitated me.
Hey everybody, Brian Sexton. You know, dreams are powerful pieces of intentional encouragement. We all have them. If you're a business owner, you've probably always dreamed of taking your sales to levels you've never seen before. I've got a guy that can help you with that. His name is Brad Norwood. My good buddy Brad has been on the Intentional Encourager podcast as a guest before, and he is a dream specialist. His company, Dream It Pro, offers incentive packages to travel to places such as the Masters, Kentucky Derby, the Super Bowl, even exotic places that you've always wanted to take your team, but you just didn't know how to do it. Brad's your guy. And oh, by the way, Brad's a certified bucket list coach, so he can help your team members achieve their personal dreams as well. I want you to go to www.dreamitpro.com and find out more, or call him directly at 479-466-6907. And by the way, tell him you heard it on the Intentional Encourager podcast. Let's get back to more great conversation here on the Intentional Encourager podcast.
Man, oh man.
I had a sunroof in that car. They said my shoe was in my sunroof. Don't ask me how that got there because I don't know.
Well, it had to be from the force of the impact. And Michael, you just said something pretty profound there that your boss said. And it almost feels to me prophetic when he said to you, help is on the way. Because it feels like to me in that moment that it could have been much worse for you, but you just said, if the seat didn't break, I would have been decapitated. If, everything from the trunk came forward, everything from the forward came in. So it's almost in a compressed state. But it's amazing to me that folks say things in the moment that mean something later as you walk through that. And your boss saying to you, hey, help is on the way. When you already had help on the scene, because I really do believe this. And folks, if you're listening to this and you don't believe in angelic visitation, I believe in angelic visitation. I know Michael believes in angelic visitation, because how else do you explain a seat breaking? You can say, well, it was from the accident. Yeah, but seats don't break a certain way to keep someone from being decapitated. And for you to come to yourself after about 10 minutes and your boss to say help is on the way, we know as Christians, and we believe as Christians, that God sends protecting angels to watch over us and be with us. I had to jump in there because what you said was so profoundly impactful and powerful that he would say to you in that moment, help is on the way.
Yeah.
And I don't want that to get lost in this, because, folks, let me tell you something. There are times when we don't know it and we walk through things like Michael walked through where help is on the way and we just don't even realize it. But help is coming there. Forgive me for jumping in there, but I wish you would continue. So your boss, paramedics come, things like that.
So the paramedics come and they bring a helicopter. After my boss was talking to me, I went back unconscious again. And my boss, the paramedics got there. My sister was 3 cars behind the accident, coming towards me. She was heading home from church, and so they had to pull me out of the back dash of the car. That was the only way of them being able to get me out. I had 3 Bibles in my car. My car, from the front to the back, inside and out, everything was tainted, destroyed. But the cop that investigated the accident saw those 3 Bibles that were on top, that were, I don't know if they were on top of me, but they were definitely in my vicinity because they were next to me. There was not a single scratch, not a rip, not a tear, not a blood stain, nothing. The only thing that made it out of that car untouched was those 3 Bibles, and I have them still today. When they got me into the helicopter to take me to Baltimore, I died. I coded out, and I had suffered. Let me go into my injuries real quick. At this point, I had suffered brain trauma. I was bleeding internally in my chest. I was bleeding externally out of my head. My pelvis had been shattered. My ribs were broken. My right lung was collapsed. My heart was bruised. I fractured my spine just a little bit beneath where the spine and the cord from our brain connects. I fractured it there, and at the bottom of my spine where it connects to my hip. My left leg, my bones were coming out of both sides, and my ankle on my left foot was shattered. I had lost vision for a little while. I had trouble seeing. So like I said, I had went to Baltimore, Maryland, in a helicopter. I said I coded out. They got me into the hospital, and they wound up doing 8 surgeries on me. One of my surgeries took how long was it? It was
Michael,
a pretty long time.
Let me ask you this. I've got to jump in and ask you this. So how far is Baltimore from where you live, from where the accident happened?
Driving, we're talking about an hour and a half.
So that's the closest. So that's the closest trauma center to where you live in your area.
Oh yeah.
So that's why they airlifted you to Baltimore, and that corridor of the country. I'll say this: that corridor of the country has some of the best trauma facilities anywhere in the United States. You've got Baltimore, you've got Annapolis, Maryland, you've got D.C., which is very close there. I mean, you live in a great area where there are phenomenal trauma people and things like that. And so I don't want that fact to get lost on the audience, because that's another thing that I see that happened in your favor was they airlifted you to Baltimore, where the facilities there are just tremendous. For you to be able to have the kind of accident that you had and be able to take you somewhere that they could really start to help you. So quickly in this part, and we will transition to part 2, and we'll get some more clarity around that. So you had 8 surgeries. So you shattered your. Which was the one that you were told later that they were most concerned about? Was it the lung? Was it the bruising of your heart? Were those the things they were most concerned about at the time?
Well, to be honest, there wasn't really a most concerned, because they didn't expect me to live. They gave me less than 1% chance to live. After they did the surgeries, while I was there, I had coded out 2 more times. And one of those times was 1 minute and 14 seconds. And they thought, because of the trauma that I already faced from my brain, from the accident, and and enduring being out of oxygen for that long, they expected my brain to be brain dead. When they had wound up putting me on life support, and they were telling my wife plan for his funeral. And she called my pastor and said, I don't know what to do. And he said, Maggie, this accident is not unto death. And she told the doctors, she said, hey, I am not at liberty to decide life and death here. So I guess you're going to have to do what you have to do. So when they did the brain check on me, my brain was full of life, and vitality. So for a couple weeks, I was on life support for a couple weeks. The leg surgery, they thought they were going to have to amputate my leg.
Wow.
They wound up putting 2 bars in my leg, and titanium, and they reconstructed my ankle with titanium as well. Then they had me in like these little cages where the surgeries were all done and taken place. And for the fractures in my spine, they had to put 2 pins at the top of my spine and 2 pins at the bottom of my spine. And then for my pelvis, they had to put an inner bar on the inside of my pelvis and an exterior bar over my pelvis, so that, because they were basically piecing my pelvis back together.
Wow. So incredible. Let's stop here. And folks, you're going to want to hear the second part, because Michael is going to go into his recovery. This is amazing, that the depth and breadth and scope of his injuries, but his brain this whole time had life in it. That is incredible. That even though he had coded 3 times, there was still life there. Incredible story. Folks, listen, I so appreciate Michael. Again, I cannot wait for part 2. And folks, you are going to want to stick around for part 2. But again, I want to thank you for joining part 1 of this special episode of the Intentional Encourager podcast with my friend Michael Merkel. Come back for part. You're not going to want to miss part 2. Do not miss part 2. I can't say that enough. Do not miss part 2 with my friend Michael Merkel here on the Intentional Encourager podcast.
My thanks as always to producer Bryce Sexton and technical advisor Matt Means. And of course, the ultimate thanks goes to the Lord Jesus Christ, who provides intentional encouragement every day through his word. If you're not subscribed to the Intentional Encourager podcast, hit the subscribe button wherever you get podcasts so you don't miss an exciting episode where you can get encouraged and stay encouraged. And remember, anyone, anywhere, at any time, any place can be an intentional encourager.